popularly known as Asari, was killed by a rival cult group at Ikwe Road at Mile 3 axis of Dibu, Port Harcourt. Iringi Koko said the Commissioner of Police, Effiong Okon, has mandated tactical teams and other officers to fish out the perpetrators and sponsors of the cult clash while investigations are ongoing. It was gathered that Asari was standing with some persons when about 5 armed men came out from a car and shot him thrice and fled the scene. It was also gathered the killing is said to be a result of the supremacy war between two cult groups over the illegal oil bunkering activities at Lechi Beach axis of Mile 1, Diobu in Port Harcourt, which led to sporadic shooting on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the Chief Security Officer of Nkpolu, Roworuko, Mile 3, Diobu, under Diobu Vigilante, Gonstami Hunwo, said while they were at Nkpolu police station to report the incident, some unknown gunmen drove in with a Jetta and Master car and took away the dead body.
At about 8 p.m. 19th, we had 2 gunshots at Ikwere Road by Ikwe Street opposite Bishop Okoye Street, and we quickly rushed down to the scene and saw a young man known and called Asari lying dead, and immediately we approached to the Bolu police station to tender our report. As we and the police were about coming back to inspect the corpse, we got a report that some unknown gunmen drove in with 1 Jetta and 1 Mazda 323 and made away with the corpse. I want to seize this opportunity to call on the general public to remain calm and go about their lawful activities, as the vigilante and the police is still on ground to restore sanity in the area.
And moving on, 15 local government areas in Rivers State are at risk of high flooding this year. Zonal Coordinator, National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, made this known in an interview with correspondent Martha Okere. Tepico said the flooding in the South states will be a result of high rainfall amount as high as 2,700 millimeters.
Rivers State, Ahuda East, Ogbagbe Andoni, Boni, Tai, Asaritoro, Eleme, Ahuda West, Abua Odua, Port Harcourt, Obiakbo, Ikwere, Gokana, Okreka, and Oyibo local government areas. These have been predicted to suffer from high flood risk, whereas 8 others, Degema, Ogubolo, Kana, Poponkoro, Akukutoro, Omuma, Eche, and Nemoha, will suffer from moderate flood risk.
Typical called on the state government and its agencies to ensure they put in place a plan that will mitigate the impact of the flooding, adding that disaster management is everybody's business.
I encourage the respective governments of the states, the local governments, because the act that established NEMA actually provides that states should set up their state emergency management agency and the local governments local emergency management committees. These states are expected to the first responders before NEMA can come to assist. So we use this medium to send this advisory to the states that do not have SEMA and the local governments that do not have LEMSI to put these structures, these institutions in place so that it can proactively manage disaster.
You may recall the DG of NEBA, Mustafa Ahmed, said this year's forecast indicates a high risk of coastal flooding due to expected rise in sea levels and tidal surge that may negatively impact agriculture, human settlement and transportation in Bayelsa, Delta, Lagos and Rivers States. And former chairman of Nigeria Bar Association, Port Harcourt branch, Dennis Kwakwam, says there is nothing wrong with the law that mandates public officials to declare their assets before and after public service. Now, speaking with our correspondent, legal practitioner said the problem of the policy is in its implementation.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with the law. Our laws are fine. I agree that your oath, go and depose to your part of the side. You declare those aspects at that oath. If anything that you said there turns out to be wrong, you have a job, that criminal offense. But the problem is when you turn in those forms, does anybody go to check what you stated as belonging to you or what you've acquired ahead of you occupying the office? The answer is no. When you also finish, you can declare your assets as well. So that those are public records. The truth of the matter is that nobody truly checks. Unless that there is an issue with any particular individual that they will pick up the records and say, okay, you've lied or something. So if it is done well, how can it not help the fighting corruption? It will.
Some residents of Port Harcourt expressed their views on the effect the assets declaration by public office holders has had on the fight against corruption.
It has not helped in any way because it's done in secret. It's supposed to be an open information for the public to access, at least under the Freedom of Information Act. A politician will come into power, you don't know his assets, his value, or his worth. But when he leaves office, you hear that he has amassed billions of naira. So if you compare that with what they declared before entering office and what they have after leaving office, it's not the same. Public asset declaration should be made public to help to reduce corruption and other problems we're having in our political system.
Those that declared their asset wrongfully, nothing was done. CCB in the country, they are just there to prove that, they are working, but at the end, they are not convicting anybody.
As you may know, the Code of Conduct Bureau mandates public officials to declare their assets before assuming office and after services. The code stipulates that failure to declare assets leads to removal from office, vacation of official seats in any legislative house, seizure and forfeiture of the state of any property acquired in abuse or corruption of office, amongst others. And INEC has denounced the report that its officials deployed to supervise the Adamawa State Governorship rerun paid a visit to the State Government House allegedly to rig the polls for inducement, for incumbent Governor Madu Fintiri. INEC National Commissioner Festus Okoye made the denial in a statement today. Okoye advised those behind the mischief to desist forthwith. And Benue State Governor Samuel Ortom has alleged that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari denied the people of Benue State meaningful projects in the last 8 years. Governor Ortom also said the president failed to secure the people of the North Central State against perpetual killings by herdsmen because he signed a law banning open grazing of livestock in the state. And his failed territorial bid, the governor said, by not going to court to challenge the outcome of the poll, he showed that he is not desperate. And Police IGP Usman Alkali Baban has directed the immediate promotion of inspectors and rank-and-file officers in the force. Baba directed a Deputy IG of Police to coordinate the screening and selection of deserving members of the Inspectorate cadre for recommendation to the Police Service Commission for promotion. And still ahead, President-elect Bola Tinubu announces 30-man presidential inauguration committee gets invitation from President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. To stay tuned. political analysts have been speaking on the importance of setting up a transition committee by the Rivers State government. And first to speak is the chairman of Defence for Human Rights and Democracy, Clifford Solomon, who believes that setting up a transition committee by the outgoing administration will afford the state government the knowledge of the assets and liabilities it is handing over.
Though it is not constitutional, but it has become a tradition. In other same countries, this has been done, and it is emulated by Nigeria. The reason for transition or handover committee is very imperative, as it will offer Rivers citizens to know the assets and liabilities of our government. D.H. Arudi remembered when Governor Nyesom Wike took over the reins of governance in Rivers State. He complained how the then governor formed a handover committee that will properly hand over the assets and liabilities of the state to him.
On his part, Executive Director of We the People, Ken Henshaw, argued that the involvement of the governor-elect and the outgoing administration makes it necessary to set up a transition committee.
I know that some people may argue that a transition committee is not necessary in the case of Rivers State. I think that is even the more reason to have a transition committee. Now you have a governor-elect who was part of the former administration, may not have seen whatever the errors, weaknesses, or the gaps of that administration. So in this instance, you need a transition committee even more, so that it gives the governor-elect an opportunity to have an outsider view of the realities of the government, which he is part of need for, and the kind of needs for the new administration.
However, Port Harcourt-based lawyer Victor Oroko said citizens should rather demand internal transparency.
Transition committee is unknown, is alien to our law. A conventional method is merely look necessary before the eyes of the right-thinking people. The outgoing governor and the incoming governor being the governor-elect, and possibly he's doing this internally, but just to the public internal transparency. The whole purpose of government is internal transparency. Anything offensive, short of if it is not brought to the public domain.
Meanwhile, President-elect Bola Tinubu has announced a 30-man presidential inauguration committee to plan a week-long presidential inauguration. Tinubu, in a letter to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, announced a former senator representing Borno North and current National Deputy Chairman North of the APC, Abubakar Kyari, as the coordinator and director of finance and budget of the committee. Also, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has invited the President-elect Bola Tinubu to a state visit after his inauguration on 29th of May. The invitation is contained in his congratulatory message to the President-elect on his election victory. Zelensky praised Tinubu over his victory, adding that his country is determined to further strengthen cooperation with Nigeria.
And now the business news.
The National Assembly directed the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, to stop planned demolition of the offices of the aviation agencies in Lagos. A directive is coming against the backdrop of the two-day warning strike embarked on by aviation workers' unions, which led to disruption of flight operations across the country.
Take it away with the entertainment news.
A first feature film shot in space premiered in Russian cinemas today. Russia sent an actress and a film director for a 12-day stint on the ISS in October 2021 to film scenes aboard the orbiting laboratory. The Russian crew beat a Hollywood project announced in 2020 by Mission Impossible star Tom Cruise, together with NASA and Elon Musk's SpaceX.
And now, updates on the sports news.
Saudi lawyer Nouf Abin Ahmed has called for Cristiano Ronaldo to be deported from the country for making obscene gestures at Al Nassr's match against Al Hilal. Al Nassr lost 0-2 to Al Hilal, and Cristiano Ronaldo was almost sent off for putting an opponent in a headlock. The Portuguese star went on to make an obscene gesture when he heard chants in favour of Messi. SpaceX Starship, the most powerful space rocket ever built, has blown up shortly after its launch in Texas. There were 10 scenes as the launch was halted with 2 seconds to go before it was given the final go-ahead minutes later. It took off, but when the booster tried to separate, systems failed and SpaceX blew it up to end its flight. And that's it on the news this evening. You heard Elections Petition Tribunal sitting in Port Harcourt has relocated to Abuja over insecurity. River State Police Command has confirmed the killing of suspected cultists in Mile 3, Diobu, Port Harcourt. NEMA has listed 15 local government areas in River State that are at the risk of high flooding. President-elect Bulletin has set up a transition committee, get invitation from President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. On a foreign scene, Elon Musk's space rocket has blown up shortly after launch in Texas. And that was the news. It's edited by Onyeka Chinwosu. Remember, cloudy weather expected in Port Harcourt this evening. Also, peace is the path to the prosperity of a nation. Let peace reign. Thanks for listening. I'm Adedayo Ilushakin. Good evening.
Connect you to the world